City business continues as the city's voters get ready to make choices in Jacksonville's municipal election. A council member who has already been reelected joins us, explaining his successful push for pedestrian safety. Plus, pressure in the nation's capital. The Supreme Court takes the cases and considers whether the White House can forgive hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. An education financing expert joins us on This Week in Jacksonville. Important issues ahead in the final few months of the current city council year in Jacksonville, and that plays out with a vast majority of council members running for re-election. Joining us now in studio, Kevin Carrico, Jacksonville City Council, representing District 4 and already re-elected for a full term starting in July. So, Councilman, I appreciate the time. What are the big topics for you this spring that you'll see in City Council?
Sure. First, thank you so much for having me on your show. We joked when we talked before about you've been in office 2.5 years, you haven't been on the show. Well, it's been a crazy 2.5 years at the City Council. So I've got my sea legs under me, and we're looking forward this season to basically rolling over half of our members. That's going to be an interesting challenge.
Transition, right?
Yep. Lots of people that are running for other offices. Lots of people not running for re-election, and then lots of folks termed out. So we're going to have to use the knowledge that we've gained over these last couple of years, and some of my colleagues who have been there longer, to kind of teach the new group how it goes, the process, and that's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting to see who's our mayor the next 8 years. I've endorsed Daniel Davis. I don't know if that's going to come up today, but I think he's good for Jacksonville and what he brings as far as experience, and we're ready to go forward and lead.
Let's talk about one of the issues that voters say is really important. A recent UNF poll says that crime is still the #1 issue for voters ahead of the mayoral election. So what's City Council doing about violent crime in Jacksonville?
Sure, that's a great question. And every time we engage with our constituents, whether we're knocking on doors or going to community meetings, crime is always the #1 issue, and I think it will be. And we've done a lot for City Council. We've increased the budget to the Sheriff's Office so we can have better technology, more officers. Even in our parks, we've updated our parks, so we're putting in live security cameras in a lot of our regional parks so families can feel safe when they're out, having recreational moments. And not just crime, but public safety as a whole. I think in my last 2 years, we've opened 2 or 3 fire stations. We've got another fire station that we broke ground on right in my district. That cuts down response times when people have heart attacks and they need first responders. So I'm committed to that. Our council is committed to it. And that's one thing I don't think me and my 19 other colleagues disagree on is public safety is priority, and we've got to continue to work. I've had a good opportunity to build a relationship with TK Waters, our new sheriff. I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think people like what he's doing. He's visible, he's out in the streets, he's talking to people, and he's got a great heart for this. And I think we'll be in good position going forward with him at the helm.
One of the things we talked about leading up to our interview, you were at the forefront of an effort here that one of our viewers submitted a question about. So let's look at this. New ordinances concerning panhandling being passed, reacting to a symptom of a problem. What is your position on dealing with homelessness? So let's talk about pedestrian safety. That's the bill that went through, and really this was about folks, coming at an overpass or at a stoplight, and folks asking for money there. How do you answer some of those folks who may be critical of this bill?
Yeah, so Jacksonville is the 6th leading city in the nation for pedestrian fatalities and injuries. 6th in the nation. That's a lot of people that are getting harmed and injured and even killed on our streets. So we looked at, well, where's this happening? How is it happening? And I think about 20% of those fatalities or injuries happened when someone was in the wrong place in the street. Some of it was due to drivers, texting and driving, things like that. And some people were just in places where they weren't supposed to be. So in the middle of an intersection, in a median, those are not safe places. So we see it visibly, usually in the form of panhandling. So that's why I think the bill was kind of mistaken for an attack on homelessness and panhandling. It's really just keeping our citizens safe, making sure they're not in the roadways where it's unsafe, busy thoroughfares in my district, Beach Boulevard, Southside Boulevard, the St. John's Town Center. You're just one text message away from someone swooping into you and having loss of life. So that was the intent of the bill for pedestrian safety. I think at the top of the question, you talked about what are we doing for homelessness. We've got one of the most robust nonprofit communities here in Jacksonville. There's help to be had if someone is searching for help. There are all of our agencies downtown, at the beaches, even in my district. We have Salvation Army on Beach Boulevard. A lot of places for homeless veterans, there's help out there. And for those that can't find the help, part of the bill is educating them. So the next 30 days after it was signed into law, JSO's not just rounding up people and throwing them in jail. They're out there helping folks, telling them, hey, if you need help, this is where you can go. Just so you know, there's a new law coming. You're not going to be able to be in the middle of the street, but here's how you get help if you need it. And I think just working together with the nonprofits and working with our JSO and just, churches, everyone. It takes a community and a village. And I think if we all work together to combat that issue, we can come up with some solutions and make a difference.
And as I understand this, it's not just the person who's asking for money. Hey, if I'm stopping and I'm actively giving to someone, it's the same thing that creates a safety hazard. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't be fair just to cite someone who is asking if the same person is giving the dollar too, then that you have to make that an infraction as well, just to be fair. People were concerned about First Amendment. It doesn't take away the ability for anyone to hold up a sign and give your First Amendment rights, whether it's John 3:16 or anything else you want to say on the side of the road. You can still do that. It's just when you leave that curb and you go out in the middle of the street where it's not safe, then law enforcement, they can step in if they think they need to.
Before we run out of time, let me ask about this. Land Use and Zoning Committee, you're the chairman there, so you've got a kind of a unique vantage point, I guess, on housing needs and what's happening from a development standpoint. There's some criticism right now. Hey, is there too much development right now? Or is it just there's a lot of activity at the same time?
There's a lot going on because the secret is out, Kent. Jacksonville is a great place to be. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. So the demand has gone so high that our market has seen the effects of that. So it's more expensive to buy a house. It's more expensive to rent. And the key to fixing that is development. Responsible development, but development. We have to build more houses. You have to build more starter homes, more luxury homes, more apartments, more workforce. Everything in the ecosystem has to continue to be built responsibly and in the right places. This is why we have a great planning department. We have a great planning commission, people that really get into the weeds of our strategic plan on where we should build. So we listen to those folks. We hear the bills out and we approve what we think is responsible development. And then the market hopefully can kind of correct itself as we continue to build and develop and make Jacksonville even more welcome to more families that want to have the same lifestyle we enjoy.
For so many people, they know that we have a lot of parks, but you were pointing out, maybe a minute left in our conversation, but $100 million of public investment in the park system. Yeah,
over the last 2 years, $50 million per year. We had a special committee for parks and quality of life, and we are renovating and revamping hundreds of parks, new basketball courts, new bathrooms, ADA compliance, and then a lot of just big special projects that could even drive tourism. We're going to be putting turf fields at places, skate parks, boat ramps, fishing docks, you name it, bike trails, all kind of things, just to really have the best park system. Right now we have the biggest. That's not a secret. We want to have the best. So we're making that public investment.
Say as well. Yeah, we know biggest, we want best.
We want it.
Hey, great conversation. Thank you for the time and appreciate that. And for everybody else, in just a couple of days, the candidates for mayor are taking the stage at Jacksonville University for the News for Jax mayoral debate. Tune in at 8 p.m. That's Wednesday, March 8th. I'm going to moderate this debate, and I'm asking questions important to you, the local voters. You can watch it live on Channel 4, News4Jax.com, and streaming on News4Jax Plus. And if you need to get caught up on local races and candidates before then, check out our voters guide. Go to News4Jax.com/voters guide. All right, critical conversations in Washington, D.C. this week. The Supreme Court takes up the topic of student loan debt forgiveness. Is it constitutional? That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
The fate of President Biden's plan to wipe out $400 billion in student loan debt now rests with the Supreme Court. Justices heard oral arguments this week in two cases challenging the plan. The Biden administration argued that it has the power to forgive student loans to protect Americans from financial harm brought on by the pandemic. 6 Republican-led states and a conservative advocacy group questioned the president's authority to do so without Congress playing any role. So, joining us right now from Arizona, Mary Jo Terry, who spent her career in student loan financing. Let's start broadly. What do you think the Supreme Court will do concerning student loan debt forgiveness?
Well, the Supreme Court has 60 to 90 days to make determinations on whether they're going to affirm the executive order to move forward with the loan forgiveness or to deny it and require the administration to go back through the legislative process. Depending on the legal definition of the HEROES Act and how broad the HEROES Act is, dependent on whether the court affirms or denies this particular request.
So the White House defending this plan, though, they say it's necessary in the wake of what happened during the coronavirus pandemic. Does that hold enough weight?
That's definitely going to be an interesting situation since no one's made a student loan payment since March of 2020. And they're scheduled to go back into repayment June of this year. But they're only going to go back into repayment once a decision has been made on the loan forgiveness program. So our borrowers have had about 3 years to hopefully budget and determine what the next steps are on their federal loans.
Yeah, we'll see if they were doing that or not, Mary Jo. Thank you. So I do want to hear from the justices. One of the key issues discussed during this week's hearing is whether the Biden administration has the power to cancel that $400 billion or so in debt. And Chief Justice John Roberts questioned why that wouldn't be a job for Congress. And then another argument brought up was that the president's plan is not fair to the millions who have already paid student loans.
What I think they argue that is missing is cost to other persons in terms of fairness, for example, people who've paid their loans, people who don't have planned their lives around not seeking loans, and people who are not eligible for loans in the first place.
Most casual observers would say if you're going to give up that much amount of money, if you're going to affect the obligations of that many Americans on a subject that's of great controversy, they would think that's something for Congress to act on.
So, Mary Jo, student loan borrowers, advocates, I mean, they were rallying outside the Supreme Court, some traveling hundreds of miles there. The student debt program, though, that uses the pandemic to try and justify forgiving all those loans, about 20 million borrowers could see the remaining balances entirely wiped out. But I think your point is, even if I get some of my debt wiped out, there's still going to be money that I have to repay, right?
Absolutely. Just in the state of Florida, the average borrower indebtedness is over $38,000. So if you have $10,000 or $20,000 taken away due to the loan forgiveness, you are still going to have a significant amount of debt that you need to take into consideration and move forward associated with repayment. And at this point, some people haven't even applied for the loan forgiveness, whether it's going to be agreed to move forward or not. If it's not, it's going to have to be legislated, and then who knows what's going to transpire with that.
Well, I want to show a graphic here. Federal data showing that the student debt crisis, it's multi-generational. I thought this was interesting. It spans from recent graduates to grandparents. And then data also showing 2.6 million borrowers are over the age of 62. This really kind of says there's a crisis across the country, right?
Absolutely. The demographic that we deal with is anybody in their 20s to people at 70s, 80s, and 90s. So we're talking about parents, grandparents, students. It's across the board. And remember, those statistics are just on federal debt. That doesn't include private education debt. We're looking at about $1.8 trillion in overall debt as a whole. So these are significant numbers.
All right, so what's your advice to folks? I know the company you work for, Why Refi, there's probably a connection there, but what's your advice to the student who has student loan debt and they've kind of been waiting? What's going to happen here? Is it going to be forgiven?
The first thing you need to do is apply. Go to studentaid.gov, fill out the application. It's going to be dependent on your income. The second thing is update your contact information. Most of us haven't done anything with student loans for the last 3 years. Some have paid, but the majority have not. Make sure you update your contact information there. That way, if the forgiveness program moves forward, you have the opportunity to receive it. Last but not least, just take 5 minutes and take a look at what the balance of your loan is and what your monthly payment is. You're going to need to determine how you're going to budget for that come June of this year, into August, into September, so on and so forth. So determine if you can make that monthly payment. If you can't make that monthly payment, see if you're on auto debit. Be really careful with that. And last but not least, find out who your servicer is. Your servicer is going to be your first point of contact to ensure that you get into a repayment program and you don't end up in delinquency or default.
All right, Mary Jo Terry, appreciate some of your insights there. Something we'll keep watching as we wait to hear what the Supreme Court of the United States rules on student loan debt forgiveness. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
An anniversary in the local education space. The milestone for Cathedral Arts Project, and looking at the policies to the group is leading. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville. And if you're only joining me Sundays for This Week in Jacksonville, you're missing out. Be sure to subscribe to my weekly Twidge newsletter. It's a bonus for News for Jax insiders. To become one, you head to news4jax.com/newsletters and then click to sign up under This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
All right, and glad you're with us. Let's take a moment without politics involved for this final segment of our show. Let's welcome Melanie Hammer, Vice President of Strategy and Operations for Cathedral Arts Project, or CAP. So the organization celebrating the 30th anniversary. Melanie, tell us how Cathedral Arts Project is involved in supporting local education.
Yeah, so we are kind of twofold. We advocate for arts education to ensure all kids have access to high quality arts education. And then we also have direct services. So we provide arts education to students in school, so during the school day through arts integration programs, and after school, so providing students with after school programs twice weekly in our public schools and charter schools.
So I don't want to be too, I'm not trying to talk down you. I just want to make sure. So explain, what are arts? When we're talking about, we're trying to make sure those are in education.
They are. So we have arts, we have theater, we have dance programs, we have sensory art, we have visual arts, and we have music classes.
Yeah. So just on a personal note, I mean, that was formative for me. I tell folks, especially young people who want to get into this business, doing music, being trained in music, education in middle school, high school, college, translates to communicating in what I'm doing right now. I mean, there's a big impact, and not just this industry, but across industries. How would you explain to somebody the value of a good arts education?
Oh my gosh, value of arts education is immeasurable. So it teaches our students collaboration, innovation, problem solving, coping skills. I mean, not only to be successful in school, but in a professional realm. I mean, these are skills that our businesses are looking for, right? These are 21st century skills that every professional industry is looking for. So it really creates a whole student, whole child learning experience and when kids are applying for college, when businesses are looking for that well-rounded person, this is what people are looking for. So it creates that whole person.
Yeah, there are folks who don't necessarily agree with that or don't support that, who maybe haven't been impacted or affected that way. So let's talk a little bit about this 30-year anniversary. How have things changed from then to now?
So CAP started in 1993. We started with one class, a dance class, with 10 children from a transitional housing facility. Since then, we have provided professional arts classes for over 31,000 students.
Wow. Okay.
It's been great. So in all of those arts disciplines. Right now, we have over 100 programs in 38 different schools in Duval County.
So one of the first things you said, hey, we advocate for, we provide some of the arts education, but we advocate for. How does that work? Is that, describe, I guess, the process, and is that just Duval County schools? Is there other schools in the region?
So we advocate in all of Northeast Florida. We have partnered with the Kennedy Center. Jacksonville is partnering with Kennedy Center to be an Any Given Child city. We are only one of 27 in the nation. We were the 14th total. So that's to ensure that we have access for all of children in Northeast Florida to have equity and access in arts education.
We're showing some of the images that Cathedral Arts Project provided. So clearly these are some of the youth enjoying the arts education here. And I think these pictures are just wonderful. So I understand that CAP has actually created data-driven solutions to support public arts education in public schools, or support funding arts, I should say, education. What does that look like? And what are the highlights of that over these 30 years that you've been trying to accomplish that?
So we have our lead, which is the landscape of education in arts in Duval, and it's a survey that we put out to all of Duval County principals. And with the help of Dr. Green and Duval County leadership, we survey to see where the gaps are. So gaps in arts resources, and that allows us then to partner with business and civic leaders, and then they can help partner with CAP to fill those gaps. So what we found was 84% of principals in 2021 needed more resources in the arts. So
is that just money? Is that just dollars, or
not
what
necessarily
is resources?
Not necessarily dollars. It could be supplies. It could be music instruments. So with thanks to Dr. Green, some of the funds from the millage increase that the voters voted on, she has now designated some of that funding to provide increase in the art supplies and music instruments. And we're already hearing from teachers that they're thankful that they're getting some of those supplies and music instruments in the hands of children. And CAP was a very advocate supporter of that millage increase. And we're happy to see a positive impact from that from our children.
Yeah, well, and as I think about it, that's one of the complaints or the pushback that sometimes you hear about schools. Hey, why are we funding for arts when we need a new school building? We need more operational expenses. But clearly what you're doing is trying to bridge that gap. I think we've got more to talk about. What do you think?
Yes,
I think
definitely.
we do too. But that's all for our show. And I want to tell you about this. We want to offer you more from this conversation about the arts and education. And we're going to do that when you join us on News 4 Jax Plus. It's available on Roku, Apple TV, Fire Stick, Android TV, Chromecast. You just search News 4 Jax on your streaming device, then download it. And then once you're there, you'll find this interview under the This Week in Jacksonville channel. Melanie, thanks for the time. All right, so in the weeks ahead, Russ Thomas is going to join us, the CEO of Availity, and has joined the Florida Chamber Board of Directors. Plus, next time, our analysts review the mayoral debate that we've got scheduled this Wednesday, 8 p.m., live from Jacksonville University. We're going to look at how the candidates may shake things up ahead of the election, which is later this month. This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4 and the CW17. And then you'll find us online at news4jax.com or streaming on News 4 Jax Plus.